listener, here we are again, another podcast, and I think this is going to be a really good one because we're talking with Jason Fischer, and he owns the Lake Erie Walleye Trail, which maybe a lot of people don't know. I'm the tournament director, but he's also the guy that owns and operates now, currently, the Fall Brawl. So I think we're going to try to dig in and find out some of the things on maybe a little better chance of winning the Fall Brawl, but some of the shenanigans that have gone on and just all of the chaos. And his day job is a little bit dramatic as well. So I'm kind of interested to hear the Jason Fischer story. How about you?
Yeah, you mean the Fall Brawl that you make me sign up for and spend money and then never catch a big fish when we're in the boat together?
No, I just never take you.
Oh.
That's I just don't take.
So you still make me sign up.
Yeah, which I mean,
and then you take me like one time probably.
Yeah, like once in a blue moon. Like you're people don't see this. It's like Country Steve, you're difficult. And, we keep our interactions to a minimum, and God knows I am too. I mean, how many days could you really deal with me?
Yeah. I mean, it's been what, 3 minutes, and I'm already had enough.
Well, let's bring Jason in because I've had enough of you too. So we're going to put you on silent mode and mute. And we want to talk about some Fall Brawl, some Lake Erie Walleye Trail, really just walleye fishing and the whole gig. I'm interested to hear what Jason's got to say. Welcome to the Bigwater podcast, Jason Fischer. How are you doing?
I'm great, Ross. I appreciate you having me on, man.
You get some extra brownie points here because you are on a family vacation, and I don't want to sound like a stalker, but I knew exactly where you were sitting. That's kind of scary.
Well, if you know about this salmon fishery up here and the resort that I'm staying at, obviously you're okay in my book. This place is off the charts up here. Super nice.
I've got old Captain Chip Cartwright that's been on our podcast, and he's sponsored me for more than 20 years. He fished out of that marina, and I've been up there I don't know how many times with him. And a lot of you Cleveland guys make the shorter jaunt by a little bit and go over to Lake Ontario, and it's crazy how those fisheries have actually changed. For guys that haven't been around this a lot, I actually used to salmon guide and way back in the day, and in the summertime, and some guys do that now even. We see some of our guys going over to Lake Ontario, but it was the opposite. You used to go to Lake Ontario and you'd catch like 3 or 4 fish if you were lucky, but they were huge. I mean, just giants. And then in Lake Michigan, you do catch a pile, but you couldn't get big ones. And it's almost really flopped now with that. I mean, somebody just caught a 40-pounder last week or 2 or 3 or whatever it was ago on Lake Michigan.
Yeah, so that's my experience here. I've caught quantities in Ontario. Every time we're up here, they're just tackle busting monsters. I mean, they're ripping your stuff to shreds. We had a copper yesterday. Listen, I can't set up every rod, but my guys said that the drag was set right and they just exploded this rod. All I heard was the rod just peel over and just explode and hit up against all the other rods. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And the fish is jumping like a tarpon 300 feet back behind the boat, and it's just, they're awesome.
The thing that I think I appreciate, and one of the things I hated about salmon fishing, is that being a salmon guide is a tough deal because you're up at, 3 in the morning maybe, and you're going, and by 9 and 10 in the morning, it's done. I mean, it's for the most part, it's done. And then you go do your thing. You got to come back in, and like where you're at right now, I don't know if we want to tell people exactly, but you've got a decent, and where you're at, you have a much easier than where we were at in Charter Boat Row, where you've got quite a no wake zone to go through. And then the gap is that line can be insane. And then you got to clean fish for the people, which we can get away with not doing that because of the way our setups are. But so it's a whole different ball of wax, man. But then you got to flip and do that at night again. And it's the reverse. And so like the bite windows are so damn small. Like we are so fortunate, people don't realize, like even in Minnesota, like the bite windows are kind of like salmon, or even Saginaw Bay. If you ice fish up there, for example, we're spoiled where we're at. We guys have no idea.
It's the craziest thing. And New York is totally different. You can go fish New York all day long. But when you come up here in Michigan, if you're out there at 5:30 in the morning, you're late. These dudes have been out there for hours, and it's like a whole city of lights. All you see is red and green lights and white lights everywhere. And first time I come up, I'm like, what are these guys doing? I didn't even know you could catch salmon in the dark. And, I've been learning for the past several years coming up here. But it's a whole different ball game. And they're coming in at 8:30, 9 o'clock, totally done. And you're just like, I'm confused because we go out and walleye fish all day long. And it's just, if you could freeze frame that sun up and that sun down for an hour it's just, that's, all the bait shows up, all the salmon go, it's just, your rods are firing. It's awesome.
So let's get back to this stuff, because salmon are just one step below largemouth, or above largemouth in my book. You know what I mean? So, ditch pickles, whatever. So can we briefly talk about what you really do to pay the bills, like your real job?
So I'm a local city cop for a place on the east side of Cleveland. I work 12-hour shifts, so I get a lot of days off to chase around these fish and do some other things. But my job is a city cop, law enforcement, and that's my main job.
I guess where I was going, that was just my setup, because you go from that, obviously that's paying the bills, taking care of the whole family. And then is it fair or accurate to say you bought the Lake Erie Walleye Trail?
So I did. I bought the Lake Erie Walleye Trail. I think it was either last year, 2 years ago now, off the WBSA. I ran it for them for a year, and the guys running it, Jeff Lash and Matt Davis, were the guys that I purchased it from amongst the group. It was owned by a group. They were just done. They've just moved on, with things in their life. And I wanted to keep the tournament going. Actually, it never set out to be, I wanted to purchase this tournament and make things, how we've made them today. It was just an opportunity given to me actually by a second place I work for, Vic Sports Center, the boat shop, by accident, really. And then when nobody took over the LEWT, it was about September. I called those guys and I'm like, hey, has anybody taken over tournament director? And Jeff's like, no. And I had to throw my name in the hat just because I fished it personally and I didn't want to see it go away. It just, it brought a lot of fun things for me, and I didn't want it to, to disappear.
Well, funny story that you don't know, because I don't think I've ever told anybody this. They came to me and wanted me to do it because they know I kind of got a no nonsense thing and figured I'd tell somebody how it is and try to be fair. But I was like, hell to the no. Are you insane? So I guess my point of this is you're a glutton for punishment with your day job. And then on your sidebar deal, like, you're a super glutton for punishment, because I know where you're going to go because you're a positive guy and you're upbeat and stuff. I get it. But deep down, if I had a couple beers in you, I mean, fishermen are the best. All my friends fish, pretty much everybody, except for producer dude. But are you just more of an acquaintance, producer dude?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a friend.
Right. Yeah, this is business. But in all seriousness, like, everybody that I'm around fishes. But I will at the same point say fishermen are some of the biggest whiny bitches I've ever seen in my life. I mean, so dealing with that when it's not your job, like,
I'm not going to tell you my opinion because I don't want to piss anybody off. But my wife says that fishermen are way more like whiny bitches than all the girls she knows. She goes, "Do you think girls have drama?" She goes, "You guys have drama." That's her opinion though. That's not mine.
Ross always has drama. Ross has drama all the time.
You're a politician. Producer dude just trying to get me in trouble. But yeah, I try to stay away from the drama. Things tend to happen. The fishing world it's again, we've producer dude, this is where he starts, throwing up flags for me to shut up. But the fishing industry has just changed so much because now with social media, everybody's trying to be a hero, and they're trying to, it's like Bob Smith fishing page, and it's like just everybody go and enjoy and like fishing. And I think everybody's sometimes is misdirected. I mean, on charters now, I see people all the time, they'll catch a fish, take a picture, and they're done for the whole day because they literally be like, oh, I got my Insta picture for the day. And I'm like, Can you not really enjoy, like, you really don't want to catch fish? You're really just going to, like, again, I don't get that, but each into their own. But in all seriousness, like that, I mean, it's got to be some of the most rewarding deals, but at the same time, that's got to be a freaking nightmare, because I understand the labor of love that is and the time that goes in. Because if you're fishing a tournament, think about this, guys. You're starting at whatever time in the morning, 5 or something in the morning. Well, the guy that's running the show and has to make sure everything's up so that when you roll in there, you're already got everything prepared. Like, that's got to be some sleepless nights.
Well, for me, it's worse because I'm a nervous Nelly. So as you saw before, an hour before this show, I'm working on the computer. You guys are trying to set some things up. I'm too afraid to screw up. So I've had to tell my own buddies, they're like, come over, drink a beer or whatever. And I'm like, listen, when you guys go home, I have to tear down the trailer, tear down the stage, take all that stuff home, deal with if we have any fish donations. I'm like, you guys are already beating me up. Why are the results not on Facebook? Why are they not on the website? What's the team of the year standings? I'm like, I can't relax, I'm like, and then here it's Sunday. Here you guys are talking to me about, who did this or what did that, or how did those fish look like this, or how, and I'm just like, the work doesn't stop for me. I'm like, you guys, once you put the rods away and you weigh in, I'm like, you're cracking a beer, and I'm like, I'm still working,
Well, and I think what you said earlier, I never really thought about it like that, but I don't know the exact year, maybe you do, but the Lake Erie Walleye Trail has been around for about 20 years now, give or take.
Yeah, so actually I don't know the exact year either, but it is the early 2000s, so it's been about 20 years.
Yeah, so I want to say it was like 01 or 02, something like that. But yeah, and I know a lot of those guys that were part of that original group and still good friends. But like you said, I think you said it well, and that just they had moved on. A lot of those guys, their kids, didn't have kids, and now they have kids. A couple of the guys you mentioned, has got kids and daughters in school and sports and real competitive stuff. And it's just like, hey, fishing takes a back seat, let alone running a tour. And then, you got that new breed where, I used to know every single guy in there, and now I guess it's kind of a good thing for you when I see some of those things, because I have friends that fish it, and you see some standings or somebody will put something up, and they're like, "Hey man, I don't know 90% of these guys," and that's a good thing though, because you're getting some fresh blood in there. I'm sure it causes other problems to a certain extent too, but how have things developed with that kind of transition for you even?
So there's always that original crew, and since I took over, the guys that were the who's who when I started fishing, like the guys that were always at the top of the leaderboard, many of those guys have rolled over. We still have a handful of guys that are still fishing, but people just evolve. It's hard to tournament fish. It's not really that rewarding. You spend a ton of money to win a little bit of money. And you do it for fun, and eventually just people's lifestyles change, and you just can't always do the tournaments, or not everybody's jobs and family life let them do the tournaments like you want to be competitive. And also, the new blood is where it's at. Getting the young guys involved and just different people involved is ultimately how you have success. So you got to see some of the new faces, and when they start winning and things like that, that's obviously the name of the game.
How, for you, is it hard to sit back and not do the fishing? You know what I mean? Like you watch these guys blast off and here you are. And I know you can sometimes sneak out during the day for a few hours or something, but watching guys bring in 45-pound sacks and you're up here like, oh, here's your check and here's your 45-pound fish. Like,
Yeah.
If you're good enough to do this, you got at some point be honest and be like, screw this.
So I'm a competitor. That's why I like tournament fishing, because I'm too old and fat to play baseball or football or any other sports that we used to play. So at send-off is basically my saddest moment, because these dudes are all jacked up and they're just ready to rock and roll. But weigh-ins for me, it's almost like I'm always part of the winning team. Many of these guys are my friends. If they're not my friends, I know them. I get to be happy for them. I get to be part of that moment, that they're just, they're raising their fish up and high-fiving each other. They're high-fiving me. So for me, I'm always part of the winning team, and that's what I like about it. But it kills me when I see the guys that I used to fish with. My tournament partner was just smoking it for basically 2 years after he kicked me off the boat. And that part sucks, because I just like, man, I could be a part of this team right now. Or this boat, this tournament, and knowing that you're not sucks, but I'm almost part of everybody's boat. So that makes it, that replaces that.
I've done a lot of tournament coverage for other organizations and things through my career doing media and things. And I'm kind of in a different way in the same boat as you, pun intended. But I can tell you there's enough days where when they let those guys out in, let's say, 6-footers or whatever it is, or even what people don't understand is when they go, oh, it's only 3-footers. Well, Lake Erie 3-footers in multi-direction and current and blowback from the day before, and you've got to run 20 miles. That's not a fun morning. And there's been many days that I stood there and I'm doing pictures or interviews or whatever it is, and I go, thank God I'm not in the boat. Like, thank God. I've gotten out of doing camera boat duty many a times where I'm like, hell no. So
I've said that plenty of times. And especially when it's cold, and or even rainy, and you're just like, man, I'm so happy I don't have to be fishing today.
Yeah, and I guess, as a guide, because I still guide quite a bit, it's those days are bittersweet because there's been an awful lot of mornings I drive out and I'm like, I've always put a little inspirational thing to start my year on my steering wheel. So I kind of think about that because I'm not a guy that could be in a cubicle, right? Like this just wouldn't work out. And you go out there some days and you're just like, this is just retarded. Like this is just doesn't make sense. But then you catch 1 9 or 10 pounder or something, or maybe it's only 6 pounder, but it's that person's biggest walleye of their career. As guides on Erie, I think that we overlook this a lot. A couple of guys that, work for me, I always tell them, like, quit downplaying this, because I just had a guy this year said he came up and he shook my hand in the middle. It was like the game stopped. He just shook my hand and he just said, I don't even need to do anything else. Let my boy, he was speechless. He's and the guy told me, it was like, I've been fishing for 41 or 42 years for walleyes. He goes, I've never caught a fish even close to this. And it was about 6 pounds, but he's fishing on bodies of water that's just not, it's not capable almost, you know what I mean? Like they don't, and maybe his skill set is part of that too. But a lot of bodies of water, people just don't understand that a bad day here is a good day a lot of other places. And for everybody, that bar is drastically different. Same thing with tournaments. Back when I was doing the tournament thing, I won the Lake Erie tournament with 18 pounds in May. Fact. I didn't even want to weigh in. I was being a kind of a crabby bitch. And I was making my turn partner. I was like, you weigh. And he's like, no, you're going to win with grace and you're going to get your ass kicked with grace. And it was just one of those perfect storms. And I'm sure you've seen a few of those. We had a MWC where like 3/4 of the field zeroed in September for their championship one, like 4 or 5 years ago or whatever. You just get certain things that line up, and everything is relative. And that's what tournament fishing brings out is, 50 pounds is great, but can you do it again tomorrow? Right? I mean, I think we do learn a lot from that. I mean, what's the thing you've learned the most from being the tournament director or from tournaments indirectly?
I think what I've learned the most is things aren't always, how do I phrase this? Reinventing the wheel isn't always the best idea. So you think, and you're trying to think, how can I make the biggest fish on the lake bite and beat these guys? And honestly, the most thing that I've noticed is it's just be consistent. Go do what you've been doing, filter through some fish if you can, and it'll work out. If you try and chase, some mysterious ghost bite, you're usually not going to find it. But what I've learned the most is just go out, fish the conditions, and fish, what you're capable of and your strengths, and usually it works out.
It's pretty good. I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that, but I think on Erie, the caveat to that is there's times you go on a school, rather it's 8 inchers and 15 inchers and then 16 to 20s mixed in, where you just can't work them fast enough, and you couldn't cycle through enough fish if you wanted to, and you've got to get on a different pattern, or sometimes just really not even a different pattern, but just leave the area like totally. And that's really, really tough to do. I mean, those old adage of, don't leave fish to find fish, maybe doesn't always apply on our body of water.
Yeah. So I generally think that most guys would have filtered that type of thing out prior to tournament day. Obviously, if you get on something tournament day and it's just changed, you need to go to plan B. But if you're working, small fish, you should try different things pre-fishing to get on a better bite, but tournament day, if you're catching 5 pound fish and you're like, man, I need 6.5 or 7, I probably wouldn't do that until I was damn good and sure that it's not going to work out for me.
So have you ever had to break up a fight at a Lake Erie Walleye Trail?
I hope that this is not a loaded question, but I'm going to say that I didn't have to break up a fight, but it could have got there.
I don't even have any background, but I'm listening.
It's so funny that you said this, because it wasn't at our last event, but it was 2 events ago. And these 2 dudes and this was before launch time, and they're in line. And when you're in line, guys are getting their boats ready, and ultimately you're in a traffic jam. So the 2 groups of dudes, I guess, were in line, and they basically got in line next to each other, and they were talking, and the talking got to more talking, and then next thing you know, these dudes are screaming at each other, and I just like overheard what was going on, and I was, by the trailer. I ran over. I'm like, you you go over here, you go over here, and I'm like, these dudes were about to tear each other up, man. But that was a first. Normally, guys will talk a little bit, but no physical stuff. This one, I guarantee, would have went physical.
Producer, do you believe in my tournament days that I might have talked a little bit of shit?
No. I find that hard to believe.
I do too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I could see, here's the deal though, with a, I say cop, police officer, whatever your acceptable term is, but if you got arrested before you even got to the tournament, like breaker, Bob, get over here. Oh, that's kind of fun.
So there's two things of that. Wherever we're at, we'll let that local law enforcement handle it, because I am not a cop when I'm not wearing that uniform or driving around that car. That's why I do the fishing stuff. A lot of police officers work side jobs, and they just do all this nonsense police work at a church, work at a school, work at the bar, or work wherever. I can't stand it. I like my job. I like being at work when I'm at work. But I like to leave and just do other things to make money. I mentioned I work at Vic's all the time. I just like it. I like to get my mind off of that police work, and it's just better for me to do that. So I'm not a cop when I'm not there.
Hey, Jason, Lake Erie Walleye Trail, you've had it. How long have you had it now?
So I think we're going on 3 years.
3 years.
Late 2020. I think I bought it.
For the future? What kind of changes are you still looking at making? You've had it a while. You've seen kind of the things that go right, the things that go wrong. What are you looking to do and looking to expand it and get the word out about it?
So I'm looking to go east and west. I've talked to some guys in Michigan. I talked to the Michigan Walleye Tour. We were dabbling around, running an event with them. I just like to cover Lake Erie. It used to be the WBSA, so it was Western Basin, and when I fished it, the farthest we would go would be Huron. We would start at McGee East, out by the power plant, and to Huron. So it was a very short season, very short area or small area of the lake. I like to see what all these guys have. So I want to get anglers comfortable fishing out by Conneaut, just as well as they could be fishing out by, Toledo area. It's just I want to cover the lake, and I want to see who's got what it takes. And I like the team of the year aspect of it. Guys that can be consistent all across the lake. Like I said, I play sports, and that's what I compare everything to. But somebody wants to be the best. It's okay to win one game, but who wins the championship? And that's what I want to bring to the area. Who's the best across the lake for this year, and call them, a state champion,
Well, and that's the difference in the Lake Erie Walleye Trail now and then is back then I can tell you why they didn't. For a fact, because when they had a few, nobody signed up because a lot of these guys were Fremont area guys, Port Clinton, Toledo, Central stuff. And those guys either never went there or, hey, we ain't driving past Cleveland, where now you've got a whole new guard. You got, like you said, a whole different group of guys. I would say a majority of the guys are from the Cleveland area almost now instead of, the minority. And so I think that that's probably helped with that. And obviously a good portion of the year, there's some great fishing down there.
Yeah. So we ran out of Ashtabula and had about 80 boats. And that was by far the most we've ever had out east. We're working on Geneva coming up this week, and we'll see how many boats we end up with. But it's always lower numbers out east, but slowly increasing that. And I also want to make it more of an atmosphere. Not that the old regime did a bad job, but it's just hard to make it an event as opposed to a fishing tournament. So I like to have cookouts, encourage people to come to the weigh-ins, prizes, raffle prizes, just all of this stuff. We have an apparel company that shows up almost at all of our events, and they sell things. Lure companies. My brother runs a outdoor education company. He's showing up. So it's almost like a festival. You show up and there's all these little things to do and look at and just increase, the enjoyment or the atmosphere, because that's cool for the anglers too. And I've never seen this before, but every one of them, all these events, you can turn the camera around and just, you pan out and you see like 200 people in the crowd, and it's cool. I mean, I'm proud of that part.
Well, I mean, a big national tour probably doesn't have 200 people at their weigh-in. I'm going to tell you right now. I've been to an awful lot of weigh-ins, and that's with walleye tournaments, man. It's just, you go to a bass event and it looks like the town got emptied out, and walleye's just never had that participation, and that hurts. It hurts everything. You know, again, on a national scale, different than like what the LEWT is. But when you have a Port Clinton and you have a whatever, like I think that, you know, the tourism people are there and they see that and they're like, hey, if people aren't getting involved, you know, they don't get the money, they don't get the local tourism things as involved. And granted, what you're doing is totally different, but on the big picture, walleye tournaments are walleye tournaments. And, you know, a lot of your guys end up taking that jump to the next level or fishing a few, dabbling. And I mean, do you look at the Lake Erie Walleye Trail? I keep stumbling here. Is almost like a minor league deal for some guys that want to get into the next level, or has there been many guys that have done that?
So a lot of our guys jump to the next level, at least on a minimal level. Like they'll do an event here or there if they're close. We do have a handful of guys that fish the National Walleye Tour, which I guess would be our big leagues in walleye fishing, on a season basis. I know guys like Zach Jobs and Ryan Buddy and Roger Riggs and Sammy Capelli. Those guys are all LEWT guys, but they fish the national tour. I think, you know, it almost should be the minor leagues, because when those guys come to town, you know, they do well. I mean, last year, I think it was last year anyways, Tyler Berthold, he's one of our LEWT guys. He took second in the National Walleye Tour, and all of these guys do well. And actually, Devin Phillips on the co-angler side of it, he took first place. So those guys are LEWT guys. They do well on the national level. But when you fish other bodies of water, it's just different. You're not fishing Lake Erie when you go out to Winnebago or you know, I don't know, wherever these guys, you know, St. Francis or one of these rivers especially. So it's definitely getting your feet wet, but it's a whole different ballgame when they go and fish all these different bodies of water.
So the Fall Brawl, like, real talk, we don't need to dig into any caskets or anything, but people, that whole thing blew up. And I have mixed emotions with it, and I'm sure some of the people, sponsors and stuff I work with, don't want me airing them, but what the hell. You know, to me, even prior to you, it's a bittersweet thing. Obviously, it's getting more people involved with fishing, right, on a big scale. And you've got more things, it's more money. Anytime you get that involvement, it's a good thing. But just like everything else, I mean, just being straight real, and there's a lot of guys just ain't going to be straight real with this. But from a real standpoint, as whether you're making a living like I do as a guide or whatever, the sportsmanship is out of control bad. I mean, and I don't expect that. That's not a Jason Fischer thing. That's not a Ross thing. It's just, as a whole, when you throw that much money together, things got out of control, whether it was people cheating or the things that I've witnessed. I mean, I might have been filming a show with one of your other employers, and, you know, a boat ran 20 feet on plane off me when we're in 6 foot of water at night filming a TV show. Got it all on camera. Like, what are you doing? And the funny part is all parties knew who this guy was, and he just, you know, he denied it, of course, even though we had him on video. But when I have you on video at night from another boat, it's pretty bad. But the point is just like, I think some guys lose their scruples when there's that much money involved. I've heard a lot of horror stories too. And again, this is prior to you. This is just the nature of the beast. Like, you could forget fishing. You could insert something else to this. When you have this kind of prize money involved, people lose their minds.
That's true. There's no question. It's actually it's the downfall of, you know, this derby fishing or tournament fishing. But you got, like, so you have to look at all the positive things, but there's no question you could bring up, you know, event after event of where somebody did something crazy. First of all, nobody used to be fishing in the fall. So when you were out there guiding, you would have the lake to yourself. So now you go, you know, I'll use one of the spots that is close to home for you. You go to the Huron boat ramp and there's, you know, 50, 60, 100 boats. Whereas when you were just simply out guide fishing, maybe 3, 4?
I was just talking with another guide about this. In the fall, November, guys that don't really care for each other, probably really when it comes down to it, guys aren't going to drink a beer with each other. But in the fall, I would say 12 to 20 people, like during the week, would be out there. I mean, heck, what people don't even remember, it's like, and it's not that I'm that old, but I think sometimes when somebody gets new into the sport and they kind of forget, like there's a lot of stuff that went on before that, right? And not that many years ago, we didn't have that nice Huron ramp. And when you look at like Vermilion, it's a nice ramp. Can't put many rigs in there, especially like tandem axle trailers like me and you both own. Huron, below that bridge there on the opposite side, on the west side of the river, you don't have many parking spots there. This whole Walski's boat launch. You had to be, I mean, there was a whole politics and everything just for getting a parking spot there. You know what I mean? So you couldn't have the capacity that we do now, where now Huron, I've seen it where by 7 a.m, because of the fall brawl, or I guess it's presumptuous to say that, but I think it's pretty accurate. 7 a.m, which I mean is barely light at that time of year, if it even is, and they're out to the road and there's people parking in the grass where, and I don't know how many rigs that thing holds, but let's say 500 or whatever it is. And you go, wow. So again, yeah, it's great. They're selling a ton of lures and all that, but I think at some point, and I'm not like pointing a finger at you or anybody else, and I think a lot of us fishermen really need to self-police. The sportsmanship thing on this is just out of control. I mean, there's been several people that have died while fishing because of, just not making good decisions and pushing the envelope a little bit. But obviously there's been some cheating scandals and all kinds of other things. And I don't know, it's, I mean, that has to still, for you, if you're being honest with me, that's got to take away from the enjoyment of what this whole thing is really supposed to be about.
Well, first of all, it terrifies me if guys would get hurt, whether it's the LEWT or the fall brawl. I don't want to see anybody, not come home to their family because of fishing. At the end of the day, this is fishing. I mean, like, you could give me a boat and it's not going to change my life. If I took a free boat and sold it, that money would be gone at some point in time. So it's not life. It might be, right now, it might change my life right now. Got to the Applebee's a couple more times or something, but I mean, it's not going to change your life forever. But if you do something dumb on the water, especially in the fall, wintertime, late, close to December, if the snowflakes are flying, you get in that water, you're not coming home, So that for sure is a number one priority. But then the cheating scandals and just the sportsmanship stuff, it drives me crazy, because that's not why anybody got into this. Not one person started fishing because they wanted to win a boat or they wanted to win some money. They started fishing because grandpa took them out or their dad took them out. And, we need to get back to that. I wholeheartedly say that. Just enjoy yourself. Go fishing. I personally have never caught a fish worthy of, the fall brawl or any of these other derbies. It's just, you get out there and fish. And we've weighed in a couple 10-pounders and things like that, but I have fun with it. I'm not expecting to win. And guys that'll, not let people on their boat in the fall because if he caught a gun, you know what? I think that would be, it is what it is. If somebody's on my boat and they're not in it, I guess I don't get to win that day. But it's just not that serious. Guys need to bring it back to what it's the roots are and why are we doing this stuff? We're doing it for fun and to get out there and all enjoy fishing and the hogs, in the fall and in the winter and springtime is what you're trying to chase, those trophies anyways, for me. Well,
for people that listen this long into the podcast, the little tip I would give them, and producer dude, I want you to chime in here in a second. The best day to fish on Lake Erie of the entire year is the following 2 days after the fall brawl is over with. Whatever day that is, it doesn't matter, 28, 29, 30. It's when you ask that question, it's funny because that end of, some years I can remember years where we didn't even get to fish at Thanksgiving time. Like it got cut short because of ice piling up and just nasty weather and what have you. But that very end of November, like basically right when the thing's over with, or early December, if we're fortunate enough to have the weather to get out and not have ramps all jacked up with ice or whatever, that is positively some of the best fishing ever. I shot probably shouldn't say who it was, but I shot a TV show that just hasn't come out yet that was just crazy fishing right after that. And the guys literally said, we never saw a boat the entire day. And he's like, what's going on? They're like, is it too cold? I'm like, no, everybody burned up all their vacation time and they're all burnt out and tired and everything. And then producer, did you remember our last day when we shot a video?
Yeah, it was late December, right? Something like that, or mid-December.
No, it was like December, like 4th, 5th, 6th, something like that. So, I mean, in fairness, it's like a week after that, but it was flat calm. And there was a handful of boats out, but I mean, it was, when I say flat calm, it was like almost, it was in the morning. It was one of those deals where you definitely wanted a jacket on, right? But after you got out there and the sun was up and it was flat calm, it was like you're down to a hoodie, and it was just a slaughter fest. Like, we had some crazy good footage, had some big fish, and it was like, where are all the people now? You know, to your point, I kind of preach these things a little bit, and people look at me like I'm batshit crazy. And I'm like, I don't feel like I'm talking like an 80-year-old man when I say this. Is if you know, several people, I guess to even over talk that, several people I know said, they're like, well, why would I go now? And I'm like, I don't know. The fishing is amazing. Like you really need that kind of carrot. And I'm super competitive too. Like, I'll race you to see how fast we can eat a burrito, or to the, you know, I'll race you like sprint in the parking lot. I'm like a 2-year-old, but
I'll take you up on the burrito thing. The sprint, I don't know. You can
I'll
have
take
that.
you up on the sprint.
Producer dude, I ran 4.5 in high school. I still got it. Them little
That
short
was 47 years ago.
Yeah, and you're broken down. Your back. You're always, oh, my back. Yeah,
producer dude, we just got a new video. We just did a new video. Now, I'm not going to take him past 400 meters, but 100 meters or less, he is grass. You mark this down. This is official. You can't get out of it now.
All right. It's a date.
I'm taking all 95 pounds of you to the house.
I'll run the event. How about that?
Yeah, there you go. You're good at that. But so, yeah, it's crazy to me how people sometimes forget, like, just to enjoy, you know, and I'm the same way, meaning that it's a business, you know, because I have to produce and do that, but to not go and stuff with that, it's just, to me, it's kind of mind blowing. And I have clients both ways. I have guys that could care less. You know, some are very well off financially, and other guys are just good old boys, and they just don't want to deal with that fuss. And I think I respect that probably more than anything. But
yeah,
and I have
fishing for fishing. They just, you know, get it back. You could simply put, just go fishing for fishing and enjoy it. You know, anything else comes later. $35 to enter this thing shouldn't even cross your mind. You know, if you're worried about it, you know, if you catch something worth, you know, $100,000 boat, great. But $35 just to enter it's just to be a part of it, you know. I
don't mandate it, you know, for our guide clients or what have you, but it's crazy because I don't want to be that guy. But in the last 6 or 7 years, we'd had 2 fish that would have been 1,000% on the top. I'll say 3. One was a blowout because it was 14 pounds, like blowout winner. But this is the kicker. So we got 2 guys. Guy fishes with me, him and his son, all the time. Okay. Shows up and he's got, you know, we'll call him Bob with him. And I was like, hey, where's your son at? Well, that dumb SOB didn't sign up for the Fall Brawl. And I told him, you know what? I'm paying for this and I'm paying for the hotel and everything. And if you're 2, you couldn't pay $35 and sign up for the Fall Brawl, you're not coming with me. So he got his buddy, whatever, you know, I've never met the guy. And he goes, yeah, so I came because of that. We're out there. We get one like 13.6, dude. I don't carry a scale in the boat anything. Oh yeah, you obviously the punchlines, you already know where this is going. But so I scale this thing and I go, it's your decision right now, but I think we should quit and take this in, because if he spits up a gizzard shad or does something, this could cost us some money. You're like, I'm just telling you guys, like, what's the deal? And like, we're high five, and this dude about breaks my arm. He's a big boy. He's just like high five, and he's like, and the other guy was sitting on my passenger seat with it folded down. And he was sitting there like he was like watching grass grow. And he's like, Bob, are you kidding me right now? And he looks and he goes, I didn't sign up. I just wanted to go on the trip. And I never thought we'd catch a big one. Now, and again, this is, we're one of those things, again, separate fishing from this for a second. Pretend this is something else. I don't know. I don't even know what the prize was at that point. It certainly wasn't where it's at now, but I want to say it was still like 80 grand, 100 grand. I don't know. Doesn't matter. But the whole thing of that is those guys don't speak anymore, because he's like, hey, I didn't take my kid on a fishing trip because he didn't do it. You knowingly didn't sign up. And the guy said, I just assumed we wouldn't catch one and I was going to go on a free trip. So that's kind of shitty too, like all around the house. Obviously I'm disappointed. You know, I want to be involved with that. And I had a group a couple of years ago, same thing. We had one 14-1, like one of the bigger ones come in my boat in a while, scaled, because most 14 pounders I hear about when they get put on a scale, they tend to shrink about 4 pounds. And it was a group of guys from out of town, and same thing. None of them signed up though, but they told me they did because they were planning on doing it on their way there, even though I overly treated them like children. The funny thing is they came back the next year and then they're just like, yeah, we didn't sign up again. And I was like, you guys got to be kidding me. And they're like, yeah, it could never happen twice. That's like verbatim what they said. I'm like, that's what I said to him. I said, your guys' bar tab would have been that in like a half an hour. Like, how could you not do this?
It's crazy that people don't sign up. If you're gonna fish, and I love the fact that over the past couple of years, a couple shoreline guys have cash checks or come close to winning. I don't think anybody's won from shore, but they've definitely cashed checks. And to me, that is just awesome because it's the luck. I want somebody who's never even thrown a line in before, just, got mad at their wife and wanted to go out and go fishing for a little bit to win this sucker. I think it's just the coolest thing that it's anybody's game. Sure, some people have a leg up when it comes to boats and electronics and things like that, but it can be won by just the average Joe. And I like that.
I mean, is it fair to say, like, producer, I don't even know if you know this or not, but that this thing has escalated quickly? Like, it went from like, hey, we've got some serious money and like, hey, this is in theory one of the biggest tournaments prize-wise that's available, to, okay, now you can win a boat. I don't even know what else you got in there, but I mean, a bunch of cash. Like, it seemed to really, like, it was good, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, to the point, and this is what I want to ask you, because I don't know, I don't want you to give names or anything like that, but how things have changed. Like, I've had to operate my guide business differently because of this. I mean, and probably for reasons you don't even think. So in the fall time, we have a lot of groups, right? And I have some guys that run trips for me that it's like you, it's not their job. They do it, they pay some bills, they justify some, expensive equipment and doing all this stuff, right? And these guys come to me and they're like, I think I'm going to take my spare days and I'm going to throw my name in the hat, if you will, right? And just go and fall brawl and see if I can catch a big fish. And obviously now that's even, expanded because of the walleye slam. Basically it's a kind of a double dip deal. I mean, if a guy catches a 15 pounder, you almost guaranteed a double dip, right? Maybe even a 14. Yeah. And so I've had to do things differently. And I was just wondering, if you had heard with some of the other guys, because from a fun fishing standpoint, like let's say it's me, you, and producer dude in the boat, most guys are signing something or have some type of bonding, whether it's a verbal or written deal, that they're going to split the thing up. Because in theory, between your deal and the other derby, it could be $250,000.
Yeah, so I guess it's two-part. I don't know what the charter guys do as far as splitting it up, but I definitely see all these guys advertising, hey, we're opening up for October, November. You must be in the slam and the brawl. And, they're just not taking you if you're not in, because the chance is there that you pull in that 14 pounder and the guys aren't in the derbies. And you're just like, I mean, who doesn't want, if you double dip, let's say you did catch the giant that wins them both or whatever. $250,000 payday divided by a couple guys on the boat. I mean, I'll raise my hand on that one.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't know any of those guys on how, if there has been maybe there's exceptions to, but a general theme of what guys are doing, or.
So as far as like splitting up the prize money,
or things are being handled now.
I always hear most people are like, it gets divided up amongst the boats, no questions asked, because especially trolling, not everybody's like, oh, this is my rod. It's a boat deal. Guys are reeling in different, your catfish usually left and right, and there's rods all over the floor. So it's a boat effort, generally speaking. But I know that the guys are advertising, hey, everybody's got to be on the boat, entered in the derbies.
And I've seen that as well. And I don't know how they, I don't want to say get away with it, but just because my experience has been, and maybe it's just my type of clientele, it's at least half my guys aren't in it. Or if it's one guy that ends up now coming and he's not in it, and I'm like, guys, I emailed you 10 times. I put things out there. I've given them information that it's their fault to not know that everybody in the boat has to be in. And if your buddy wants to come last minute, I can't make a phone call for you. Like, this is what it is. And if I could make a phone call, I wouldn't do it for you for being silly like this. But, so things are changing. And I'm really like, I don't not take people because of that. But now we have like instituted a deal where we officially are sharing. Like, that's something I started doing, and 99% everybody's like, I get it, I'm on board, that's great. I've actually had people take me aside, and why I actually kind of did that, to be truthful, was I had people coming on my boat and saying, hey, if we get a big one, here's a couple $100. True story. If we get a big one, here's a couple $100, make sure I get that, because I know Bob won't split it with me. Or, like almost like I'm having to be the school teacher, or I'm policing these guys in the boat because this guy doesn't trust his buddy and he thinks he's going to try to jump on a rod even if it's his turn. And I'm like, again, that stuff kind of pisses me off just because we're getting away from like enjoying a day in the lake. Like, that's what I just told a client the other day. They're like, well, I don't see how we're splitting. We're doing like, we are fishing. We're enjoying a day in the lake. We are running a guide trip. And if we're fortunate enough to catch a fish that is going to give us more money than what this trip is going to cost and above and beyond and everything else, like, so be it. We'll split it up, and super big bonus. Right? So, and I think overwhelmingly people have been pretty down with that, but just like anything else, not everybody's going to always be on the same page.
I haven't heard of any, litigation has come from, winnings. I'm sure it'll happen. And I don't know everybody that's won prizes and whether or not they've been on charters and things like that, but I have not heard of any personal problems between guys that have won.
I have. I know for a fact. I know one of the guys, they had, everything was verbal, and let's just say all three people in the boat don't speak to each other anymore. But again, that's human nature. And that's why even like, some of the guys, like I said, that run with me when we're doing these multiple boat trips or a corporate thing or something, and they're like, hey, can we just put something down then that we were splitting it, because I want to feel like I'll just take that time off and do my own thing. Or, hey, why allow that situation? Because it is so much money now. Even when it was like, it's crazy to say, but because 50 grand's a lot of money. But back when it was like 50 grand and there wasn't even a boat prize or whatever that number was, there still could have been a problem, but it wasn't as much of an issue. But now you almost have to have something down, everybody on the same page, because this isn't even just a millennial thing. Being real, people are just different. Nicest way I can put that. Producer dude, do you see that there could ever be a problem with this?
I mean, I know there has been. I know it's just what you've told me, probably what you were alluding to before, So
when me and you are shooting this fall, doing some of our sponsor videos and stuff, are you going to jump on a rod if you see a board go under?
No.
God, thank God, because I'd beat that thing like a samurai with the net.
You would have to give me half the money if you bring it in, right?
Oh, you're signed. Producer dude, he has signed so much litigation for us to work together that one more form won't mean anything. You're gonna have to get the legal team on this. No, in all seriousness, like, me and him are planning on shooting some more stuff this fall, and
he makes me sign up every year.
Yeah, I mean,
I like to hear it. I like to hear all those registrations. Keep them coming.
I mean, but again, it's just like when you hear. Again, I don't know what kind of numbers you want to give us or whatever, but when I talk about my clients not signing up and forgetting, or one guy in the group doesn't and 5 guys do, when I see those numbers and things, and it was probably more honestly when the Fall Brawl, when Craig was involved, because I know him pretty well. And it's like, here's the deal. And then all of a sudden, last second, boom, like everybody signs up like 5 seconds before. It's like, hey, my credit card bill is due on the 21st. So on 20th at 11:50 at night, I'm paying it, type of deal. Right. And that's for you.
All of my registrations are like that. These guys, most of them will wait, the last minute to sign up. And then if I have a website issue or some other crazy nonsense, it's just so you try to incentivize these guys to sign up throughout the course of the year. We have these sign up parties, increase the popularity and just give things away. But ultimately,
didn't you give away an elk hunt or something?
yeah. So I don't know if I can plug anybody here. I'll ask before I. So this these guys contacted me, High Mountain Hunts out, and they're local. They live around here, but they guide out of Colorado. They have an outfit in Colorado and New Mexico. I think that might be their only two lodges, but they contact us wanting us to be involved. And I was like, it has to be a prank because it's literally my favorite thing to do. I honest to God, more than fishing, elk hunting is my deal. I'm going out in September. And I'm like, you guys are punking me because I no sooner took over the Brawl, an elk hunt place is calling me wanting to sponsor the event. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. This is one of my buddies. So anyways, we gave away an elk hunt. We paired that up with Mossy Oak and they outfitted the thing. And guys, just for signing up, we gave them a sweatshirt. And I wanted people to enter that actually wanted to win instead of just giving it to just a total random person. So it was basically like you buy a sweatshirt and you get involved with the hunt. And a guy, if I remember his name, I want to say Mike Gibson, out in Illinois. He won. The dude's a hunter. He's going to take his son, and it's going to be cool. I mean, he's been out west hunting. It was just cool to see. So like all these when people get involved and want to be parts of things, and that was just, I thought that was a joke. I thought somebody was playing a joke on me.
So back to the real reality of this. So we talked about, somebody in the boat not being signed up. So people that are listening to this that don't know what the Fall Brawl is, it's a one fish, big fish derby. I'm sure if you're living under a rock, you still know what this is. But everybody in the boat has to be signed up in advance. You can't sign up the morning of, the day of. There's a deadline, whatever that is, October something.
October 11th, I believe.
October 11th. So that's a big one because that happens a lot. Like that DQs a lot of people or won't even allow a fish to be weighed or whatever, right? What are some of the big rules and fractions that maybe somebody doesn't know, like it's unintentional or maybe it's intentional? Like what are some of the things you've seen that you could bring to light so people avoid that or to entertain us a little bit?
So just obviously having people signed up. Everybody always asks like, oh, what if my wife wants to go or my kids or Uncle Joe, and he doesn't fish. He just wants to be on the boat. Well, everybody on the boat has to be registered in the Derby. And that's both for the Fall Brawl and the Slam. So it's the same for both. Number two is generally speaking, especially when it comes to kids, guys or parents or grandpas, allow kids to reel in all the fish. I get it. It's fun. It adds to it, but it's actually illegal. So if a kid catches, let's just say, you and a child is fishing and you let him reel in all the fish. He's allowed to reel in 6 and keep 6. You're allowed to reel in 6 and keep 6. So keep that in mind as they, catch their limit. Yeah. So they'll say, oh, we've got 11 and we're just, we kept that one slot open. Well, if you've done that, then only one person can be catching fish. We've seen, guys maybe forget to get their fishing license or don't get their fishing license. That's happened. Over rodding in Ohio, you can use 3 rods per angler on Erie. And if you use more than that, obviously you have increased chances of catching a better fish. But if, 2 of us are fishing and you use 8 rods, you would be illegal. And if you caught a big fish, it's just, you're done. You're illegal. Some of the other things, just simply just being deceitful and being dishonest. If you loaded a fish up with whatever you would load it up with for it to weigh more.
Yeah, I've heard some fish have been injected with things through the years.
Honestly, I don't know a lot of the history as I should, but I know that there's been a handful of people disqualified, throughout the years. Some of them you hear from and some of them you never hear from again, which tells me they probably knew what they did and was just rolling the dice.
So let's say I get a rules infraction for whatever reason, and I'm my fishes doesn't count or however that works. Are you banned from fishing again?
So in the past you have been. Quite frankly, I don't know all of the people who have been banned. And I don't know all of the reasons as to why people have been banned because that wasn't my gig. And nobody handed me a sheet of paper and said, this is, Ross who committed this infraction. And there's two sides to that. I look at things in a legal perspective. So do people make mistakes in real life? Sure. Somebody steals something from a store. Does that mean you should never be allowed to go shopping again? No. You could pay your fine, do your punishment, and then it's over with. Should never be allowed to fish again because you committed a rules infraction. You could be disqualified for getting a ticket from a Division of Wildlife officer during one of these derbies. But what did you do? Did you try and steal and cheat from somebody, or did you, not have enough life jackets for all the occupants on your boat?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's say you failed a watercraft surprise inspection, whatever they call those things. Your flares were out of date or something. Would that DQ you from the Fall Brawl?
So by the rule book, it could, but what I'm looking for is, did you do something intentionally to cheat people out of money, right? If your stickers were out of date, that's happened to me before. I've got tickets, my car, I've been driving down the road and my license plates have been expired, and I've been punished for that. And
you didn't flash them your badge?
Maybe this was back in the day, but what did you do? That's what I want to look at. So the way I've changed the rules is, not only now, if you fail a test, which we have polygraph tests in this business, basically to keep things honest. It's the only thing you have, because I'm not fishing on your boat. You're not fishing on everybody else's boat. So what do we have? We ask you these questions with these professionals. And if you fail, and if you're truthful for that matter, but either here or there, I'm giving you two. So Ross, something comes up on your test and they're like, hey, this guy failed. Well, I'm going to confirm that, because I'm going to say, Ross, what happened? It says you failed this question. Did you abide by all these state fish and wildlife regulations? And you're going to say, man, I really did everything by the book. The only thing I can think of is, one time I cleaned out my boat and I didn't have all my life jackets in there. And I knew I was breaking the rules, but I had traveled an hour to go fishing and we needed to go. So I didn't have all my life jackets in the boat. Right. So when you take a polygraph test, you think about these things and you're like, man, I know that I definitely violated a rule right there. But for me, I may not DQ you on that. And if you took a child fishing and the kid reeled in all the fish and you told me that, is that a rules violation? Absolutely. Is it a Division of Wildlife violation? Absolutely. But it's not just an end all with me. I want people to do this the right way. I want it to count. And if you cheated somebody out of money or cheated to win, I have no love for you. And I know how you are, but I want to keep it PG. F these people. I don't want people to cheat. I truly don't. I want people to win. I want people to have a good time. But if you make a simple, stupid mistake, if your boat's not registered, I don't care. I just don't. But I want people to do it the right way.
I think that's fair. And again, I don't want to bring up, I want to keep this real, but I also don't want to go down Pandora's box or whatever. But, prior to you having it, there was obviously, that's why the Walleye Slam started, and there was people passing one lie detector test, then in the other one they weren't, or vice versa. And it's kind of like, again, interpretation, things are different. Like, what is really the intent? And that's a tough thing sometimes to gauge. It's a little subjective, but I kind of like where you're going with that. And I think now that there was animosity, I think, with the old Fall Brawl and then what was the early Walleye Slam, which is why there was two, because they all used to be one, right? And I assume, Tad and producer Dude, we've had Craig Lewis on the podcast, known the guy for 20 plus years. I assume you guys, while you may not be, having beers together every day, like you guys don't seem to have any issues. Like you're running the same thing. Everybody's kind of getting along, or has it been a little bit difficult?
So we're not having beers together every day because we don't live close enough to have beers together every day. But I was out drinking with some buddies, and Craig was a part of that. Matter of fact, Craig would not allow me to buy my own dinner with my wife. He bought it, and this is the only time I've ever been out with Craig. But I have a real good relationship with him. He's a big part of the other side, if you will, the Walleye Slam. What I want out of this thing is the community, right? The gas stations, the hotels, the bait shops, the outfitters. I want everybody to benefit from this. It's just good for the area. It's good for Lake Erie. We have the best fishery here, in the world, if you will. But it's good for everybody. And I have no reason. Craig, I'll give you a little backstory here. Craig, not only I shouldn't even have been on Lake Erie with the boat that I was in, but I go into his shop and I'm like, how do you fish for these walleye? I had caught one and I'm like, how do you do this? And he gave me,
is this 2 years ago?
Yeah, this was last year. Actually, so I'd grown up fishing, but I'd never fished Lake Erie until I met a buddy. He had a boat. He fished Lake Erie his whole life. So we would go out there and we'd fish, but I had no clue how to do it myself. So I go in and I'm like, I got this boat. It's some 16-foot aluminum boat. It was actually a buddy of mine's who it stored it at my house and I was allowed to use it. So we're out there fishing and I had no line counters. I'm using spinning tackle, just casting stuff out and dragging it behind the boat, calling it trolling. So I go into a shop, I buy some stuff, and I'm not kidding you. I wouldn't stroke you at this point. He gave me a walleye trolling book that you wrote with, was it Dr. Sonar?
No, that one. Well, me and Bruce, the Dr. Sonar, did do one, but the one I think you're talking about is me and Kurt Niedermeyer.
Yes, yeah, that's it, Kurt Niedermeyer. I'm not even kidding you. I read this book. I haven't read a book in my life, okay, except for I've read this one 15 times, and I try to figure out a few things. There it is. That's it. Yep.
Producer dude, looking a little younger there without the whiskers.
I read that book from front to back, a handful of times, and I just tried to pick up things, and I started to catch fish. And then the next person that I ran into outside of Craig teaching me how to fish was a Geneva guy. He's a charter guy. He's a PA boy. His name's Ryan Prezzuti. So I bought the precision trolling book from him. I asked online. I couldn't find them. They weren't printing them anymore. They used to have like the book with, it was like on a spiral binder and you could flip through all the different baits. So I wanted that book because I'm like, how do I catch these fish? How do I know how deep I am? So I went out there and he taught me, about calibrating rods and all this other stuff that I had read, but it didn't make any sense to me. So when we started to catch some fish and have these, fun times on the water myself, I was just hooked, and then of course a couple other guys that you see very popular of the Nick's and Gary's art. So then I wanted a StarCraft because that's what they ran. They ran the STX 2050, I believe, and I wanted that sucker. So I found my way to VIX. I'm like, I want this StarCraft. And then coincidentally, my wife was like, why do you want that? The Ranger has a much better front deck for sun tanning. She's like, I want that one. I'm like, did you see the price tag on that thing? So she actually was like, no, we want the Ranger instead of the StarCraft. And so we got that. And, and then I started, I wanted to rig my own boat because I tinker with everything. So I rigged some stuff, go back to VIX for, whatever, maybe an oil change or something. And Victor was like, didn't you rig this thing yourself? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, when can you start? So it's like everything at one piece led to another. And that's why I work at the boat shop now. And I have a great relationship with those guys, but it's just like Craig led me to walleye fishing, walleye fishing led me to another guy, Ryan, and then, I'm following these guys on Facebook and watching what they're doing. And next thing you know, I'm back at the boat shop and here I am today. And I always talk about that. It's like, just not even 10 years ago, I was fishing for bass. Probably. I was probably a bass guy.
Well, I can't thank you enough. I know we could do this for just about forever, but I appreciate you giving us your time. We know you're on doing the family thing and wish you guys the best with Lake Erie. There's somebody coming and bringing you some dinner.
Look at that.
Oh, man.
When's the last time you had dinner on your podcast?
That's good. That's good timing.
All right, Mom. Look at it. We've got our Lake Michigan salmon right here.
Nice. But we appreciate you giving us your time, and you guys go check out the Lake Erie Walleye Trail and obviously the Fall Brawl. Make sure you get signed up before the deadline, folks, because even if you know Jimmy or Jason, it's not going to change anything for you getting in, and it may cost you a seat in somebody's boat. So Make sure you check us out at bigwaterfishing.com. Bigwater Fishing pretty much everywhere. Producer duty may need to help me, but here we go, like the Micro Machine Man doing it real fast. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Bigwater Fishing, as well as Stitcher, Google, Apple, Amazon. Where else are we at?
I think you got them.
I missed one or two, but I guess
I mean, really, we're anywhere you get your podcast.
If you want to download podcasts, we're on there, and it's not going to cost you anything. No, come on, just download the thing already. Bigwater Fishing. Jason, thanks again for your time.
I appreciate you, Ross, man. I can't tell you how enjoyable it was for me just to chat with you guys. And anybody who's watching this already knows the content that you put out. I've watched it 100,000 times, whether it's rigging boats or just fishing or how-tos, but all the stuff you put out is awesome, man. And just to be able to talk to you, it's kind of neat. It's come full circle for me, so thank you.
Part of the fishing community, man. Appreciate it.